Hi everyone. Today I'm speaking to you remotely from Modam GTech Arranmore, Ireland's first offshore digital hub. For those of you who may not be familiar with Arranmore Island, it is located 5 kilometres off the west coast of County Donegal. It is one of Ireland's largest offshore islands by population. It is serviced by 2 ferry companies, has 3 schools, a health centre, and although some might say we're a little bit biased, we believe it has scenery as beautiful as you'll find anywhere in the world. Arranmore also has an amazing, warm and friendly people, making up a community who for generations have had a massive love and pride for the place from which they come. No matter where they go in the world, Arranmore is always home, and it is a place they speak of fondly and dream often of returning to. So anyone would wonder why they would leave such a wonderful place to begin with. Like a lot of rural communities, Arranmore has for decades been facing a constant decline in its population numbers. Over the years, this decline has been due to an almost forced emigration as young people leave their home place in search of employment, as traditional industries such as fishing and farming, for example, face hardship and cuts which make it difficult to make a living from jobs which used to be the backbone of many rural communities. And this loss of our young people to cities and foreign shores, for them only to return during holiday seasons and maybe to live when they reach retirement age, makes the sustainability of the communities from which they come uncertain for the future. Such communities now tend to have an older population with fewer and fewer young families and young people to keep the community strong moving forward. This can be most noticeable in the local schools with falling numbers in pupil intake, which is an example of how population decline can eventually lead to loss of essential services for the community. It was this reduction in pupil numbers in schools and the possibility of loss of essential services, along with a pride in community and an almost overwhelming desire to not only preserve it for the future generations but to build on it also, which was behind the Coming Home campaign set up by Arranmore Island Community Council in 2017. The aim was to get our diaspora to start thinking about returning home to Arranmore. We already knew the love they all had for the place, but our hurdle was to make employment opportunities on the island a reality for those who wish to avail of them. If we could change how people worked in Arranmore to earn a living, changed how they access jobs and make these opportunities attractive, we could provide a real alternative to those who felt they needed to leave their community to find work and encourage our diaspora to come home. Before the world changed due to the terrible pandemic, remote work was a thing, but it was something that was still at the fringes of the working world and not something that everyone could avail of. Certainly many people didn't believe that remote work was even on their radar, and indeed some believed it was a luxury, only accessible in niche roles or to people high up the corporate ladder. But here in Ireland, people like Tracy Keogh, who founded Grow Remote, were pushing to make remote work the norm. They could see the benefits it could bring not only to the worker, but to their families and communities, and indeed the companies for which they worked. It was a remote working that we knew could turn the tide on our declining population here in Arranmore, but we also knew that we needed to first create the infrastructure to allow people to work remotely. And so we secured funding from the Department of Rural and Community Development and our local county council to create a digital hub, a shared workspace on Arranmore as good as you would find in any city. We also knew that connectivity was crucial, and so our Island Council entered into a very successful partnership with Free Ireland, who provide high-speed internet to our digital hub that gives the workers the connectivity they not only had come to expect working in a city, but which they need to work successfully and productively. In 2019, when we opened our digital hub here on Arranmore, it was, understandably, still looked on with some curiosity. And this was in large part due to so many people still having a more traditional view of the way we worked, especially in the more office desk-centred employment. we also were aware that the ability to be able to work remotely from Arranmore would not mean a huge influx of our diaspora moving home all of a sudden. What we hoped would happen would be that people would start spending more time on Arranmore, extending their holidays, and instead of holidaying here for 2 weeks and leaving again, they could spend 4 weeks here, 2 of which they could work remotely, but yet still spend time with their families. And this began to happen. Faces who we might see once a year or even every couple of years began to visit and work from the hub when they were here. We also began seeing digital nomads, people who travel and work remotely at the same time, beginning to visit. They got to enjoy the experience of island life for a week or two while also working from the hub. And of course, this new influx of people who might not ordinarily be here brings benefit to the wider community. It means more trade in the local shops, more people using local transport and local services. The hospitality sector would also benefit, as would the accommodation providers. So there is much benefit, maybe sometimes unseen, that communities can enjoy when remote work becomes the norm. Something we have seen here in Arranmore is the new wealth of knowledge and skills that remote workers bring with them, which, if tapped into, can bring huge benefit to the wider community. One example is an idea which an islander who returned home to work remotely came up with. Laura Early, a head recruiter for Twitter and who is now working from Arranmore, suggested the idea of a mentoring program which would see current remote workers buddy with people wishing to move to remote work and guide them through the process of accessing and embarking on a new remote working career. This idea is now in the process of being piloted here on Arranmore, and with community funding from Grow Remote, the app is now being developed to complement the programme by Matthew Loughnane of Hexa Studios, who is also currently working from Arranmore. This wouldn't have been possible just a few years ago, but it has the potential to open many opportunities for people within our island community to access well-paid employment, which remote work now brings, and if successful, is scalable and replicable in many other areas. Since we began our Coming Home project, the number of remote workers in Arranmore has gone up tenfold, and our population has increased also. Being able to access employment means people have the ability to live where they choose, especially if the role is truly locationless. It allows them to have secure employment, a good wage with a disposable income, and the ability to raise a family if they so choose in the community which they feel they belong. It means families can preserve and sustain, children can grow enjoying the community of wider family circles and a bigger community around them. Heritage and cultures can also be enjoyed by future generations. For the worker, it provides freedom. If you're in a role which allows you to work remotely, no longer are you required to have long commutes to and from the office. In 2020, surveys showed the average daily commute in Dublin was almost 1 hour. Here in Arranmore, if you work from the hub, your journey in the morning is around 5 minutes. For some who have a home office, commuting time is no longer even a consideration that they have to worry about. And in your lunch hour, you can step out on to the beach for a quick walk and come back in before your afternoon begins. And of course, while this all sounds idyllic, there is massive benefit in this with regards to the work that is being done. Research from Oxford University showed that happy workers were 13% more productive, something employers might want to consider in their remote working policies that the pandemic has now moved them to implement. There is, of course, an onus on governments and companies to help make remote work a success for all concerned. And that not only includes the worker, but families, communities, wider society, and indeed the environment. In a recent study, the Western Development Commission showed 95% of workers who could work remotely were in favour of working remotely on an ongoing basis to some extent in the future after the pandemic. So there is a massive appetite for this in society. As such, it is now imperative that while governments now produce remote work strategies, they must also prioritise a gold standard fibre and Wi-Fi broadband network to every part of the country, including all of our offshore islands. This will not only improve remote workers' ability to work even more productively and open up employment opportunities to so many people, but it will help with improving service provision to rural and urban communities alike in areas such as education and healthcare. And companies must make remote roles visible and strive to ensure remote roles are fully remote and advertised as locationless. In the next few years, by degrees, the future of work will be much different to what we once knew. Of course, there are many positions which will always require people to work as they always did. There are so many people in so many roles that aren't remote, that society would find difficult to operate without. But a lot of work will be remote, or at the very least a hybrid model. The pandemic and lockdowns have shown what can actually be done without people having to commute to a city, into an office block each day. Never mind the benefit to the companies themselves of no longer following what was once a status quo of the big city office block, and the benefit to the worker and the communities in which they live. Just removing the commute from a daily job will have a massive positive impact on the environment. The potentials are huge, and without doubt, the future of work will see it move to a hybrid or fully remote models. But it is much more than that. For many, it could be about coming home to the place they love. I will finish with a quote from remote work expert Chris Hurd, who recently said, "Remote work isn't about the future of work, it's about the future of living. It's about upgrading quality of life for millions globally." Thanks for listening, everyone.